Welcome to another episode of Engineering Influence, a podcast by the American Council of Engineering Companies. Today we're here to talk about a partnership between UConn School of Civil and Environmental Engineering and the Connecticut Department of Transportation that seeks to help address workforce development in their state. I'm pleased to be joined by Eric Jackson, a research professor and executive director of the Connecticut Transportation Institute within the UConn School of Engineering, and Carlo Leone, Director of Workforce Development and Strategic Initiatives at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Eric and Carlo, it's good to see you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to highlight this endeavor. I'm personally grateful given CTI's affiliation with the Engineering Workforce Consortium. A priority of the Engineering Workforce Consortium is to bring awareness to successful programs and partnerships that set out to address the workforce shortage facing the engineering industry. So we're pleased to have you both. With that, let's dive in. Eric and Carlo, how did this partnership come into existence?
I can maybe start out. We've been working with the Connecticut DOT on research for a very long time. And this initiative really came out because the Connecticut DOT reached out to UConn saying, we need more engineers to be able to meet the demand that we have. We're retiring a lot of staff, and we need UConn to help us graduate and kind of develop the workforce. At the same time, we received feedback from the Connecticut DOT that we needed to maybe tweak our curriculum a little bit to make sure that students that are graduating are actually in the correct fields, they come out prepared for the tasks and the skills that the Connecticut DOT needs most critically at this point.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. And thanks for having us, Patrick. It's really wonderful for both of us to be here to highlight our working relationship. And just to piggyback on what Eric said, the Connecticut DOT and UConn have had long collaborations for many years now. And this is just an extension of trying to be better cooperatively in terms of trying to meet the needs and demands for the infrastructure workforce that we need for the future. So when we saw that UConn entered into the New England, the engineering consortium, we wanted to make sure that we participate as well, work as best we can to really focus on building the platforms for the future. And to Eric's point about trying to find new engineers for all the projects that are out there, this has worked seamlessly for us, and we wanted to make sure that we could do just that. So really, this has been an ongoing effort, but now we're starting to actually focus in on the needs by adjusting the curriculum, making sure that we have outreach to the students to really elevate, our projects going forward.
That's great. As you guys both indicated in your answers talking about the curriculum, what modifications were necessary to make an impactful program?
Yeah, let me touch in real quick, and then Eric can get into the details.
Sure.
We at the DOT, we have so many projects going on in all at the same time, basically. And as we're trying to find new engineers, we're working with all our schools, and UConn being our flagship university was just a natural progression to really focus on that. And UConn being a great research university, they teach their engineers all sorts of applications. But we asked them to dive just a little bit deeper on the civil engineering. They teach theory well, but we wanted to make sure that the students had a little bit more practical experience taught. And so we're trying to create those agreements on how to best do that. And we're aware that curriculum cannot be changed easily overnight, but we wanted to at least start that discussion on how best to do that.
And I'd follow up on that with, civil engineering is a very, very broad major. So you can go into structures, you can go into site design, transportation, water resources, environmental. I mean, it's a very, very broad field. So hearing back directly from a group within the state that's actually hiring our graduates was incredibly valuable to understand where their needs currently lie, kind of where some of their deficiencies are in terms of being able to hire and those skill sets that they see are most valuable. So really getting that feedback was really important for us so that we can start focusing on, so if the DOT has a need in bridge design, we can maybe focus, or we can even try and push some of our students into structures, into a field that the DOT sees as a potential growth opportunity for them, or if they've got a lot of retirements coming up and they need to start refilling those positions, we can kind of move students around a little bit. We can encourage them on which skill sets are going to be most important for their future, because ultimately we want to produce students that are, key to the workforce and that can get a job once they graduate.
Yeah, that's great perspective. I think to both your points, when you look at some of these modifications that you have to make, sometimes the realized gains of those changes aren't felt for a while. So how do you guys work uh, as organizations through your administrations and leadership to be patient in those modifications to see those results? Because I think, in education, it just takes time to see those results.
I mean, that's a challenge within the university system itself. I mean, we have to have staff or faculty that redesign a course. That redesign of a course, or tweaking of their curriculum, may take a year and a half, and then you've got to get a whole cohort of students through that program, which it's a 4 or 5 year program. So you're really looking at kind of a 6 year kind of push before you really start seeing some of those gains. So it's a very large ship that takes a long time to turn. And we have a lot of different groups that hire students. So we'd love to get feedback, but we can't we can't slice and dice the curriculum so much that we only graduate engineers for one individual group. So it's very political. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces, but the goal is to really start working with people that are hiring so we can start seeing, are the changes we make, are they actually having the desired outcome? And if they're not, then we make another change, another tweak, and we kind of iterate until we get either the DOT or other groups exactly what they need.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. It basically boils down to a lot of constant communication, staying in touch with each other, and really flushing out where we are and where we're trying to go, and working within the framework of both institutions. So those we set up monthly calls to make sure that we can stay on target and address any issues or concerns that pop up along the way, and really focus on what we're trying to do. So that's really had a huge impact and benefit to keeping our eye on the ball in what we're trying to accomplish.
That's great. In my current capacity within ACEC, I lead the workforce committee here. And a lot of times what I'm hearing is the introduction of technology into this space and what kind of impact that will have over the working environment over the next 5, 10, 15 years. How is CTI and UConn School of Engineering introducing technology into the curriculum to meet today's workforce environment?
So this is a very challenging way to move forward. I mean, you look at tools like AI and ChatGPT. If you start using those tools without knowing the fundamentals and basics, you can't judge what the output of that tool is and if it's valid or if it's kind of a hallucination that's coming up out of AI. So we still really try and focus on the foundations of engineering. There's a lot of great technology and tools that are out there, but if you don't understand the inputs and you don't understand to make sure that the output is reasonable and just, then you're going to end up with a significant issue with designs or outcomes that may be faulty and may end up costing people their lives. So we have to do this balance of ensuring that our students have the fundamentals and foundations, but we also need to start incorporating new technologies into the classroom. That started with CAD, and we used to draft everything out on paper, and there's better ways to do things, but you still have to keep that quality control and that check. So trying to understand where the Connecticut DOT is going, kind of where their current level set is with technology, what they're comfortable with. We can push some of those boundaries, but we don't want students to come out and then expect to go to an employer, and that employer's not ready for the level of technology that the students have been trained and taught at. So it's a very, very delicate balance we have to try and push forward with.
Yeah, and at the DOT, we use a lot of existing technology, but we also know that there's a lot of new technology coming down and will be available. So we're trying to pivot when we need to, and by keeping in constant communication with Eric and his team, that gives us a little bit of a lead time to sort of say, hey, how do we get to where we want to go? Whether it be artificial intelligence with our vehicles, whether it's wrong way driving, which we're initiating. It could be in even the materials department for what we need for our roads and infrastructure. So it's just sharing that information as to saying where do we need to address our focus. And I think that cross collaboration is starting to make a huge impact because now the leadership in both organizations are speaking the same language to each other, and we're available to share our expertise from where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, with Eric as he's trying to teach his new students and build new curriculum. So we're here to offer any expertise for when they need that information and hopefully build the program the way it needs to be for the future.
I guess I have one follow-up question to that because I think when you think of the role of technology, how will that impact the working environment? Will there be, think of like an ER, when you imagine an ER from 25 years ago, you would have 5 attending doctors on that floor with maybe 2 nurse practitioners. That ratio has kind of flipped on its head where you have now 1 attending doctor with probably 15 nurse practitioners servicing that one area. How does that correlation transfer over to the engineering industry with technology's advancements? Are you still pushing to have those licensed engineers, or are you emphasizing that technology could create a para engineer type role? I'll leave that to either both of you to answer.
Yeah, I'll take a quick crack at it. It's a really great and interesting question. We can never have too many engineers. But at the same time, new technology opens up a lot of new doors and opportunities as to what our engineers can do. For example, when we need to inspect rails and bridges and so forth, it was a lot of boots on the ground. But now with the advent of drone technology, we can have high above inspections without putting people at risk. So that's new. That's a new skill set that is then learned by our engineers. It doesn't replace them as a person needed for the agency. It just gives them another skill set to really improve and expand their capabilities. So I think one doesn't preclude the other or take away from each other. It's more it adds to the capability of the agency.
I would follow up on that. It's very similar to where we're headed with autonomous and connected vehicles. My goal is not to create self-driving vehicles, but my goal is to create a car that supplements the ability of the driver of that vehicle, to create a car that can't crash, but that driver of that vehicle is still behind the wheel, still making the decisions, still the one that is in primary control, but their skills are augmented with new technologies, new ways of looking at things and innovative skills that really kind of improve the system overall. And we're not trying to replace that driver of the vehicle, not trying to replace the engineer. We're trying to augment their ability to do work more productively and accurately and timely.
Great. I definitely agree with both those perspectives. As part of the Engineering Workforce Consortium, we like to highlight these programs. And so when you think of the meaningful impact that this partnership can have, to achieve scalability in Connecticut, who are the stakeholders that need to be involved? And if other states were to consider this type of arrangement, what recommendations would you both make?
Yeah, I'll add real quick. We with DOT, we have so many large projects. It cuts across such a wide spectrum. So we work and try to reach out to our consultants. We work with our contractors. We've been doing a lot of outreach with our higher education institutions to really produce quality engineers, UConn being one of the key members, and also keeping our state and officials and elected officials informed all the way from the governor down to the legislature so that they are aware of what we're trying to accomplish, and making sure that government has a role to play as well as in the private public partnership space. So it's making sure that all the entities that have a role to play are talking to each other and are part of the conversation.
One of the key things that I kind of learned from this is, more feedback from those that are consuming our students is always great. Understanding where our students are going and where the demand is critical. But one of the other things that I learned internally to the university is it's not as easy as going, all right, we're going to add 50 new students this semester. There's bureaucracy within the university system itself. There's not a switch that we can just flip and say, all right, we're going to dramatically increase the number of students. The university has to balance kind of degrees and majors across the entire university. There's always a kind of a push and pull for who's going to get the most students. It requires within the university us going all the way up to the provost level, to one of the highest levels within the university, to basically make this pitch and demand that we have a hiring agency within the state that has this demand for students. How do we help them meet that demand, and how do we graduate more engineers? Completely different level of thinking than I'm kind of have been accustomed to in the past. And never really fully understood the process that has to go into increasing the number of engineers and increasing the number of students. And then you hope those students actually stick around for the 4 years to graduate at the end. So it was definitely a challenge. We did end up getting a 10% increase kind of in the admits for civil and environmental engineering. We'll see over the next couple of years how many of those kind of are retained and then actually end up graduating through the program.
That's great. Well, you kind of walked into my next question there, and I'll kind of try and pivot a little bit, because you talked about those practices that you guys are making within the UConn School of Engineering. Eric, if you could just provide context for our viewers, where does this program stand as it relates to enrollment, and where do you envision it? I know that what you just said really reflects market demand and trying to listen to market input to make your course corrections, but if you were to forecast, I don't know, 3, 5, maybe 8 years down the road, what does the school envision for this program?
So we're really looking for where the growth areas are. Up until a year or two ago, computer science, there were so many computer science applications that were coming in. The computer science field was growing dramatically. This last cycle, we actually saw a dramatic increase in the number of civil engineering students that were applying. It seems like there was this kind of a little bit of a shift away from kind of the technology side and back a little bit more towards some of our traditional, we call it kind of the dirt and rocks part and piece of engineering, getting back to those physical sciences that are needed. The state really started to work on trying to promote transportation engineering as a career and a career path. So I think in the last section, or the last group of students that came through, civil environmental engineering was the second largest group of people that said they were wanting to come into that major within the University of Connecticut. So we're kind of seeing this a little bit of shift away from the technology back into the more traditional sciences. And I think the market is kind of driving that. We look at the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's a lot of push that's been out there to rebuild our infrastructure. And I think students are seeing that. Students hear that a lot. So the more they hear and see the opportunities and options, the more we have interest in those kind of more traditional technologies. And that job market will help drive students that join the university.
Yeah. That's great. And Carlo, I guess from the department's perspective and the state agency, what are you guys hoping to see from a growth standpoint? What is it that you guys are expecting?
Well, we're living it as well as expecting it, that we have so many projects throughout the state all happening at the same time. So we're really trying to make sure that we have a sustainable workforce. We're helping, and we're trying to help Eric and through all our capabilities to really publicize that civil engineering is an exciting field. It still is an exciting field, and it's still out there and available for folks for a great career with great pay and great benefits. So it's really publicizing what I think has been shadowed in the recent past through all the new technology and STEM engineering, which is all great and needed. But we don't want to lose sight of the fact that civil engineering has a great career platform. So we work to make sure that we publicize it as best as possible. We work with the school to have our interns and promoting summer programs, bringing on apprenticeships on board so that students can actually do a test drive, if you will, with the agency, and then be ready for them when they're ready to graduate, so that if we pitch to them early on that we are an employer that desires their capabilities, in the end, we want to be an employer of choice. They're going to have, a broad spectrum of employers that could utilize their needs. We just want to make sure that they consider the agency when that time comes. But first and foremost, we really want to pitch the idea that civil engineering is key to the state success as well as the national success. So what we're talking about here, I'm sure, is the discussions that are happening statewide across the country.
That's great, Carl. And I appreciate that from an educational standpoint. I guess, Eric, I'd almost pose the same question. How do we continue to promote the value proposition of civil engineering? But I think your discussion is a little bit different because you're the first touch point for students coming into the industry who are interested. So what does the messaging look like from a UConn School of Engineering perspective?
I think it's twofold. I think it's understanding that there's tremendous value in an engineering degree. There's tremendous flexibility within a civil engineering degree. So you may graduate thinking you're going to do one thing, you get into an agency like the DOT, and there's like so many different fields. You could be out underneath a bridge, you can be building a roadway. I mean, there's tons of different opportunities within even a state agency like the DOT where you're not stuck in one spot and you have no flexibility or ability to move. The second thing, and I think the Connecticut DOT is really starting to do a great job with this, is students want to be able to see what their career progression looks like. Like, what does my first year look like? After my first year, what opportunities do I have to move up? What's my pay going to be as I move up? So I've seen some documents coming out, and we've talked with the DOT, kind of laying out what that career progression looks like. How many years does it take to get from a level 1 to a level 2 and then a level 2 to a level 3? Like, how do you grow as an engineer? And then when you start at an institution, what type of support are you going to get? What type of mentorship are you going to get? Are you going to be just thrown into a dark room and, left behind a computer? Or are you going to get to see and experience the entire organization and truly understand kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis and how it impacts the entire state and community and people that are actually out there traveling? So I think the DOT's really started to kind of change their messaging, and I think students are starting to pick up on that there is a lot of versatility, and there's a lot of career growth and options that are going to come out as we have an aging engineering workforce. Those boomers are starting to retire, and it's creating some voids at the top that really allows some of these people coming in, students graduating, to see a career path and trajectory up through the system.
That's great. Being mindful of time, I know Eric and Carlo, it's been an absolute pleasure having you both on the Engineering Influence podcast. I think given your affiliation with the Engineering Workforce Consortium, these conversations will continue. To your last point, Eric, trying to really educate students about the career trajectory that they could have is really meaningful. And so look forward to our next opportunity. But thanks again both to Eric and Carlo for joining us on Engineering Influence.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.